Wow, that was awesome intro. Hello, everybody. Radek Zaleski here, and today I have a pleasure to host a show with Todd Yates, CTO at TransAct. Hello, Todd.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I just watched the game, uh, NBA. We discussed it earlier, and
Right?
you are, I believe, in Texas, between San
Yes.
Antonio and Austin, and I hear a rain behind you. Is it true?
Rain, a little bit of thunder, so apologize for the low rumbles.
I hope it will be exciting, and I hope that you will have access to power during the show. Uh, Todd, could you walk me quickly through what's Transact, what's the company is doing? I believe you have a very important mission to serve.
Sure. So TransAct is a company based in the U.S., but with a international reach. So based just outside Seattle, our home office is in Linwood, Washington. But we pre-COVID, we had offices in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada, Milwaukee, Boston, North Carolina, Phoenix. Now, post-COVID, the only office we have open is our home office in Linwood. All of our other offices are closed down, and we're pretty much 100% remote now, like most people are. So,
Yeah.
but TransAct is an ed tech company focused completely in education, both higher education and secondary and early elementary education software. And we are a merger and acquisition company. So our primary goal, primary mission is to acquire promising technologies from smaller companies and integrate them into TransAct's kind of global offering, but also to take, some what might be good technology in a very small niche and bring it to the SaaS market and make it a fully functional enterprise technology.
So I assume you were serving the education market on your website. I see that you're serving, for example, over 6,000 school districts or over 25,000 schools. What are the typical problems inside those organizations that the software you manage solve?
So everything, and that's one of the things. We have 14 current SaaS applications, and always looking for more and improving and adding modules into our current repertoire. But we service everything from uh, bus rides and where my bus is and how students get to school to how they register for after school programs, to how they pay for graduation tickets,
Okay.
or
So you
parent
take
portal, parent information portals.
so you take the school experience and either try to understand where is the SaaS missing to enhance it digitally, and you've tried to buy it, or you're already seeing that there is a niche already operating by someone, and then you try to partner with this company and then build like a bigger portfolio of services, correct?
Both, yeah, exactly. What we find a lot of times, smaller companies are constrained by, capital, but not just capital, but also the knowledge and skill to expand into, what's a really challenging SaaS market.
So I assume, tell me if I'm right, that it was already a trend before the COVID. I can tell, in Europe, that the digitalization of education was happening. But my presumption is during the COVID and after, it all accelerated, right, to the moon. Is it
Exactly.
correct
Yes.
assumption?
Yeah. So we had a little give and take, just like everyone. So you can imagine our software that serves graduation and commencement events and on campus events took a little bit of a hit. But all
Yeah.
of our other sectors, especially the ones with parent engagement, parent communication, and providing regulated and critical information to parents, those just took off like a rocket. We had a lot of growth and a lot of very you know uh, immediate needs that we had to meet in a market where none of us were able to meet together face to
Yeah.
face, and so
So you are a CTO. What's interesting for me, if you are a company that basically buys other companies' solutions software, and then your role is what, to integrate it in unison, to work together, or to keep them, being developed well. What's your goal at the company?
yeah. So I actually joined TransAct through an acquisition. When I joined the company in 2018, I was working for another company as basically CTO, but came into TransAct as the vice president of enterprise architecture. And at that time, we didn't even have a development shop, so like zero
Oh,
developers and eight products at the time. Um, so my role now, as CTO, I became the CTO last year, and we have a very, NetGuru is aware because we partnered with NetGuru for the last year, a little over a year now. We have a pretty expensive, expansive development staff as well. Um, and so what we have done is basically taken maybe some older architecture, things that had not been updated, maybe things that were current architecture, but maybe had not been structured for security or scalability, and really turn them into things that can work in the enterprise, that meet requirements for security, for the number of users that we might see. We have some of our applications that have 1 million plus concurrent users at any given point of the day. So that's a pretty high scale for a small
yeah.
company, that might be 2 or 3 people to meet. So
Yeah. So for me, would be interesting, and we have a techie audience. What would be your advice for smaller ad tech startups that might be, acquired by the company like yours? What would be your advice in terms of thinking about the proper architecture, infrastructure, making sure that you are, acquirable in the future, and if what are the mistakes you are seeing too often and that could be avoided?
yeah, I would say stick with as much open source and generic technology as you can in your architecture stack. It makes you a little more flexible, with especially when working with other companies and other developers. If you get tied to proprietary technology stack, you're going to be stuck with that stack, both kind of financially and from a licensing standpoint for a very long time. And my experience has been those larger, proprietary companies do not keep up with the current market very well. They're usually 2 or 3 years behind the curve.
Okay, so first one is open source,
Yes,
which is way to go. The mistake might be, rely on commercial platforms that you can get a vendor lock, or they will be late to develop. And
right.
in terms of security best practices, because I assume education is kind of similar to healthcare, it might not be complicated in terms of like interactions, but it's get complicated because of the compliance and the fact that people have to rely that no information is leaked. Any tips around those topics?
Yeah, so you have to, even if you're starting with the smallest bit of student data or educational data, you have to start with the thought that security comes first. And you start your architecture from planning on how to make it as impermeable as possible, right? And to make sure that you don't have those leaks. And it's good, especially for smaller companies, to um, partner up with maybe someone with more skill set, or look to a company like TransAct to partner with and say, help us with your experience, and help us build and architect this to be something that's sustainable.
So what I hear is you are open to give advice for such companies if they reach out to you for, let's say, if there's a small company and they would like to be assessed, whatever. This is something you can do, right?
We talk to people all the time. We're happy to talk to anyone who's who's in the market, and not necessarily looking to acquire everyone. We're not the
Of
big
course.
conglomerate, but we do partner up, and we do exchange information with potential partners constantly.
You're not yet a Tiger Global of education, but you know
Yeah,
what the future might come. I see a question. So and I had also on the question on my list. So Zofia is asking if there is something you had to unlearn on your professional path. And I took a look at your career, and you were a PhD, but you're not a tech PhD, correct?
that's correct.
So
Yeah,
could you?
I've been in uh, educational technology my entire career, from the beginning. And I when I started in technology, and we were talking about this earlier about how far things have come just in the past few years. When I started in technology, there weren't people in the market that had computer science, computer engineering degrees, right? So we were all I remember my first job with a big ed tech company. I was a network architect, and I had an English degree. And the guy that I worked with was a psychology major. And then our boss was had a degree in music theater. So there were a lot of us that were working in the field because we enjoyed it and we had the skill and the knowledge to do it, but maybe wasn't our educational background. So
Mhm.
I actually pursued my education for personal enrichment, and stayed
Nice.
with the English literature theme all the way through my PhD. So
Nice. And so, going back to the question, so what you had to unlearn during your professional path? Good.
yeah, I spent a lot of time working for a company that, and going back to what I said earlier, that was tied to some proprietary technology. And I don't want to use the O word too much, but it was largely based on Oracle. And
Whoa.
Oracle, stringent technology,
Yeah.
and licensing and featuring. I spent 15 years basically developing, working on apps and installing apps that were Oracle based. When I moved out of that space, the hardest thing for me to do was to come up and look for other things that might serve that purpose without that complexity that Oracle has, that kind of dinosaur look that Oracle technology has.
So I hear that your, let's say, maybe not passion, this I don't know, but preference towards open source solutions is based on your
Absolutely.
history with Oracle, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, education is not in the business of IT, right? That
Yeah.
seems a little bit of an oxymoron, right? But education, the business is to educate students and to prepare them for their lives. And so an education institution doesn't need to be in the business of creating software or running Oracle stacks. And for the longest time, especially the late 90s and early 2000s, you had to have a very expensive IT staff in order to have any technology on campus at all. And it's just not that way anymore, right? So many things have moved into the cloud, like what TransAct does, and the way to make it cost effective, much more effective, where we can meet a school, that might be a small school in the middle of nowhere in Canada, that has a very small budget, and help them. We reduce those costs by keeping it at scale and open source, and keeping the Oracles and the Microsofts out of the mix.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Clearly, the whole um, ease of use software plus adaptability for a small organization to use software, it went through the roof thanks to the open source. In my view, right, it became very
Right.
affordable and very customizable. And what you've mentioned, those license fees are not as crippling for right for smaller units. So
Right.
this is something I never thought about the education market. Right now, I will after this call, after this pod, I will check with my school. Are they using open source systems, or do they use some kind of license? It will be interesting to
Right.
see. And
I
I'm
was
using the yeah.
I was a
Go.
CIO at a institution in the early 2000s, and just to use and this is will date me a little bit. This was prior to the wide availability of Linux in the enterprise, and just to run software on Unix systems, we were buying licenses for our servers and for Unix operating systems from either IBM or Oracle or someone like that. It was an immense expense. I mean, the
Yeah.
majority of my IT budget every year was towards licensing to Oracle or Microsoft or IBM. And that just is, there's no need for that anymore. There's just a wealth of opportunities outside those kind of big proprietary behemoths now.
So let me go with follow up topic on this. So how these days decision making process inside education organizations looks like? I assume that in the past it was something around like okay, we need to have an IT. What are the three biggest national providers? Let's pick one of those, and you had to pick one of those because I assume compliance, regulatory issues, right? Is it
Right.
the same way right now, or maybe there is a more freedom? Maybe I can sit down with my laptop as someone running IT at educational, middle, high school, whatever, and I just Google for SASes. Is it like that, or walk me through the process?
Yeah, so it's exactly like you said. It used to be the fact that if you were going to have an information technology presence on campus, you would sign a contract with Oracle or IBM or some ERP provider that was global, and you would have basically everything that you did at the campus would be that brand, and you would sign a contract. Typically, they would force you into contracts that were 5, 10 years long, that were millions of dollars every year, right? And that was the accepted methodology, right? If I'm going to be IBM, I'm going to be IBM everything. I'm going to have IBM desktops. I'm going to have IBM servers. I'm going to have IBM
Yeah,
licensing. All of these things. Now, it much more the approach can be the best of breed, right? So now, if I want the best, server class, I'm really going to look to a cloud, right? I'm not going to try to buy hardware. I'm going to lease it from someone or pay per use. Same thing with ERP, like student registrations or student financial systems. I'm not locked into a single vendor anymore. There are so many people in the market space that can offer that same, at a very much more competitive rate.
right. I'm browsing your website as you were explaining, and I'm looking, for example, at the tab solutions. And
Mhm.
sorry for not knowing this. I was raised in Europe, but I'm trying to understand those solutions, and I see very specific niche topics like ESA preparedness,
Yep.
parent notices, and communication compliance. This I can get, but gear up grant reporting. So these are very, very specific solutions tailored to very specific problems, right?
Right. And a lot of those
So
are regulatory, that are put
right,
upon, that are requirements of, every educational institution, regardless of size and capacity, that the U.S. federal government requires. So,
so so it works like that. That you have someone who is running those grants inside the educational institution, and this person might want to use the software for that. I assume that's the desired route. And to choose one of those solutions, it has to be compliant with a regulatory needs, right? And
right,
then you are free to go. You can choose whatever the system you want, right?
right, right. Yeah, and it's
So
just like the ESSA compliance with parent notices. That's a requirement, right? That's
okay.
um, so the Every Student Succeeds Act. That's what ESSA stands for. And one of the requirements from that act is that um, institutions have the ability to communicate with students and parents in their own native language. So
Mm-hmm.
not English. So what we do is we maintain a library of required educational documents, notices, parent communications, etc., and we translate those into 33 plus different languages, and we provide that service to like I said, institutions that may not have someone on staff who can translate that
Mm-hmm.
into you know
Oh,
um, into whatever language is required for the student. So they fill
that's
it out
cool.
one time in English, and then that document, they can translate it in any one of those Englishes or any one of those non-English document versions that we have.
So that's handy, really. Solves
Mm-hmm.
like a real problem for smaller organizations, I presume.
Right.
Um, so I have a question from Tomasz, and I will rephrase it a bit. So Tomasz is asking, how do you handle scalability and performance issues as the system grows and the number of users increases? And I will add to this also, and how do you maintain the coherence of those systems if you have so many solutions from different, smaller companies that you acquire? How does not this all break?
Yeah, so let's start with your question first. The
Yeah.
way we maintain all of that is that we don't keep the existing architecture. We have an internal
Okay.
kind of architectural standard, and we migrate things to it. Most of the time, if say we acquire a technology and it has 80% of our accepted standards in the stack, we may leave it and then kind of plan on refactoring it over time slowly. Or we might do like our recent project with NetGuru. We might take the entire application and rewrite it from the ground up and redesign it. That helps us maintain consistency. It helps us maintain a higher level of service availability. And obviously we use AWS to help maintain scalability, but our architecture is very much driven around infrastructure as code, and we
Mm-hmm.
use containerized auto scaling to meet demand. At any given time, like one of our applications that serves the higher education market, it's very what we call peaky in demand, right? So one day we might have 100,000 users on it, and then the first day of registration we might have 15 million users on it from one day to
Yeah,
the
that's
next.
that's
um,
hard to maintain.
right. So we scale that to meet demand, and we just as a matter of without any intervention on it on our DevOps or our ops team at all, we add capacity based on usage, much like the Netflix model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Netflix
Yeah.
doesn't have thousands of servers out there waiting for somebody to log into them. When somebody starts watching a movie, they start spinning up extra instances. We do the same thing. As soon as somebody logs into our software and we reach a threshold of capacity, we add more and more and more, and without fundamental limit on where we're gonna stop there until we maintain our quality of service.
Mhm. Um, I, I will put a thesis here, and please don't kill me for it. So it sounds like you're a kind of a boring company. So all of those cool, startups, they build stuff. They fight for, to solve a smaller chunk of a problem inside the education systems. Once they get traction, you acquire them and you make them right, quote unquote, right? Scalable, performant, secure. This is boring job, Tom.
You would think that, right? But we are not adverse to learning something from a company that we acquire, and we implement
Yeah.
things from companies that we acquire. If they're doing something better than we're doing, it absolutely becomes fundamentally part of our architecture. So, the only things that we really kind of uh, adhere to with the companies we acquire is we want to be uniform at some point. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean that maybe our way is the best. We may adapt what we acquire from a company. Matter of fact, that's exactly how I came in. TransAct
Yeah.
was working and had a particular set of architecture that they were using. They came to the company that I was working for and they said, "Hey, you guys do it a lot better than we do it. So come in and help us do it."
Awesome.
So
Wow. Yeah, so the company ingrained the culture and the solutions that you brought in as a acquired company. That's awesome to
right,
hear, because often you hear about those challenges when companies are joining forces together, but the bigger entity is not really open to feedback or improvements, right? So
right.
this is not your culture, what I can hear.
No, not at all. No, no. We
Awesome.
take the best of, and even recently, our last acquisition, there were a lot of things that they did with customer engagement and customer kind of uh, success measures and metrics that they were doing a lot better than we were, and so now we've incorporated those metrics into the way we track our service to our clients and our trying to meet our best um, net promoter score we can as well.
Hmm. Let me jump into another topic,
Mhm.
which is I have to do it, Todd. Sorry for riding the wave, but what
That's
about
okay.
AI in education, Todd? What about AI in education? What are your views, especially in software? How does it impact the whole thing? What do you plan?
I think it's there's a lot to yet to be determined, and I don't want that to be a cop out answer, but I think there's a lot of possibility, especially um, in helping set up some of the basics right now. Right, there's a lot of leaps that you can make and set yourself farther ahead in a project than you may without AI. I think there's a lot of possibilities for incorporating AI, especially in customer service software and things that are on demand requests. But I don't think we've really kind of figured out yet exactly
Hmm.
how we're going to use it or what the best use of it is. We've done some testing, with providing basic scripting and coding and things like
Hmm.
that just at the start of a project, and it's promising, but it's far from perfect.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
there's we're gonna pay attention to the growth for sure.
one of the things I was thinking about from a parent perspective, and I don't even know if it's feasible, plus if it's going to be that way, but I was thinking about applying the chat GPT or similar systems into the databases that the education entities have. And instead of me going into the meeting with a teacher, or instead of me browsing through the systems with my kids' scores, I would be able to ask like open-ended questions with natural language, like, "Is my son doing okay?" Or is there anything I can do better as a parent, or these type of things. And my intuition is that maybe someday the system might take the data it has, parse it, and respond to me in a natural way like a teacher, right? And I
Right,
think it could be feasible as a demo right now. What I'm not sure if it is something I want, right? If
right,
I'm not sure if I want to talk with with the data inside the institution without this human proxy of a teacher. So this is one of the things I was thinking that might you know be something that developed sooner or later. And the other stuff I was thinking is more of a back office job. Probably this is something you already look at in. I assume there's a lot of internal reporting, right, in educational organizations, like who did tests, how are we going with that, is the program on track, blah blah blah, this and that. And I assume that it can be AI could be used into creating semi-autonomous reporting to the stakeholders plus the people using those educational entities, either parents or students or grant givers, right?
Yeah.
And
There's a,
again, I don't know how exactly you could use, but these are the things I was thinking about before the talk.
yeah, like I said, there's a lot of potential for self-service, right? For self-service access to data. The issue that we face right now is
Hmm.
containerization and security of that data, right? So all of the big AI
Yeah.
platforms extend into places where legally we can't share student information, right? So
Yep.
going forward, that might be a possibility if we can containerize it and segment it and keep that information from naturally growing outside of a secure zone for parents and students. But absolutely, yeah, there's a huge um, piece of the puzzle there that we still have to figure out, though. I think for AI.
Yeah, one of the things that might be also risky, how I understand the current inner workings of AI, that you might not get the quote unquote true answer from the system, right? That there might be a
Right,
hallucination, and this is clearly something you don't want, especially if it's about you, right? You don't want to get
right.
false answers from the system. So probably
Yeah,
this has to be solved.
yeah, especially if you're making evidence-based decisions, right? Then
Right.
you need to
Yeah.
be able to trust your data, that your data is concrete, and that's one of the things. It is too easy to fool it right now. Much like it has human foibles. It's too easy to fool people sometimes with data.
Hmm.
So making
Yeah.
sure that the data is real and valid and like I said, secure. I think is going to be the kind of big challenge for usage, especially in education and healthcare. So
Yeah, the healthcare, I think, is very similar, and probably all the government-related types of softwares, right?
right,
Work on your personal data and the things that are crucial for your well-being as a human. This space for AI, I think it's maybe not far from being used on a mass scale, but clearly needs some iterations and better thought of how it should
right.
work. Again, I'm here. If we've mentioned this, I'm big fan of open sourcing all this, right? With the
Yes,
models and the system, so it's not a black box like it is right now a bit.
right. Yeah, I think
Um,
I'm looking forward to when that the model becomes available for under GPL license or something like that. That would be fantastic. So
I agree 100%. I see a question from Mary. Um, she asks, what kind of digital investment would serve schools the most, in your view? Say you're a state decision maker and you have funds to move. What's the most pressing need that could be answered with digital right now?
ooh, that's a tough one. Um, I would say probably the best place to spend funds would be in accessibility. So
Oh,
a lot of software, a lot of architecture, a lot of services that are digital now to students are not 100% accessible to people with vision issues or hearing issues or maybe hand mobility. I would say the best investment we can make is making all of the utilities that we have available to people that are that struggle with accessibility issues.
that's a spot on. We have a offering around accessibility. We provide services around auditing if your application is accessible. Plus, we offer services that allows you to become accessible first in terms of how your design system is being built with proper UX and then UI techniques, and then also how it's being developed further, right? So it
Right.
doesn't become a spaghetti code and it's snappy, fast, and accessible. And honestly speaking, this is pretty hard to pitch for organizations, and
Right.
this is maybe the issue. But whenever I'm trying to explain that it's important to think about those things and not thinking about them right now will be costly in the future because the regulators will impose those accessibility requirements sooner or later. I don't see a lot of traction, honestly. Like people like, yeah, yeah, no, no, not interesting. So is this something you're also seeing with your, in your industry? Like, is it something that people don't care about, or is it like too expensive, or maybe they don't see value? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's most of the approaches in technology and education has been no different over the years. Is make this work now, and we'll worry about it, being accessible for people later. And then too often, the later becomes too much of an investment for a company to bear, and so it just doesn't happen. And the
Hmm.
only way that a lot of current technologies are being updated for accessibility is through government regulation and requirements, right? But it's not just those, like, the fundamental, like, vision challenge and the accessibility there. It's also fundamental accessibility for people who might be economically challenged, or even bandwidth challenged, right? They might live in an internet desert, and having the
Yeah.
ability to compress and have a responsive design that is lighter weight and can serve people on smaller bandwidth and things like that. That those are all critical.
Yeah, this is spot on. I use our in here in Europe. I use our systems, governmental systems for health, e-health, and I must say they're pretty well done. They are, in terms of how they look, they're pretty rudimentary, but from my perspective, they pass the general accessibility requirements. They're super lightweight, you know. Will work fine just on any device. I'm talking about the web versions. I'm not sure about the mobile applications. This I would have to check, but it works pretty well. I think we were inspired by stuff UK government was doing with their Gov on CO UK. Pretty impressive stuff. So
Right.
clearly, we private sector probably can be better at using this, right?
Yeah.
I see a question from Lorenzo. Sorry, first from okay, for Lorenzo first. Then we go back to Jacek. Um, from your experience, what are the training needs teachers are bringing up, and what solutions can match them?
So a lot of what we've seen in the last couple of years obviously has to do with COVID and the switch for kind of continuous education, whether students are in the classroom or outside the classroom. So those kind of technologies are whether it's a learning information system or just digital content libraries that keep your classroom materials together and continuous, regardless of where students are. Those have been kind of the big focus um, the last couple of years as well. We've seen a large shift towards serving students who might be homeless, and making sure that you're tracking the services available to them. And they may change school districts, many times during a year, and making sure that you're keeping up with their needs and tracking their ability to find services and find education. That's really been a lot of the focus recently.
Interesting. Sounds like something clearly under the radar because it serves really important, purpose. But it does not sounds, sexy, right? It's
Right,
something that um, as an outsider I would never thought about such things, right? Because I
right.
don't get them, and clearly you
Yeah.
guys are in it. I have a question from Jacek that was earlier on. So he says, I've worked in Polish education for some time, and I can recall many similar problems that we've mentioned on this talk today. And it might sound as a bit of utopia, but you were able to somehow enforce UI and UX consistency with so many external software providers. So is it something you were able to do?
uh, we try. And this is, I hate to kind of be pedantic, but this is one of the most important aspects of our relationship with NetGuru, is we are driving towards common UI UX, regardless of platform or software. we're really looking forward to having kind of consistent design that we can apply. Whether you're looking for your students' bus stop and where they're going to be picked up to go to school, or whether you're tracking fundamental grant resources for homeless students, to have the UI and the login experience and all of those things be kind of fundamentally the same.
That would be interesting. Again, probably it's not yet there, and maybe it's utopia, but it would be great to see the regulators, especially if a solution is obligatory, to enforce those consistencies, right? So either if you're a provider in the space, if we mentioned accessibility, but it would be ideal that it would, how I view it, there would be some kind of a headless type of experience, obligatory, proper APIs, connectors, and then the UI UX consistency. So
Right.
this whole systems, if even if you switch them for the end user, the experience would stay the same way. I think it would be great. I don't know if it's possible.
Well,
Um,
I think if Transact is doing its job well, then we would always be working on it and never finished, right? So
yeah.
that would be part of the goal, is to always have that,
Mhm.
and adopting whatever we come across into that same state.
So we are at 43 minutes. We have last question from Przemysław. And Przemysław is asking, regarding security, what steps do you take to safeguard data privacy and security, especially in light of recent data breaches and cybersecurity threats?
Yeah, so it's a constant challenge, and an ever evolving challenge. And so Transact, we took the effort in 2018. We went from kind of the traditional, um, you know, outside border approach to security, and we began implementing zero trust architecture. So essentially, anything that we do has to be checked and double checked and have the right security certificates. Now, that's not to say that it's impossible for it to be breached or accessed, because there's always a human element that you just cannot get around, especially with social engineering. But
Mhm.
we try to eliminate the ability for anyone to have enough impact to make it a substantial breach. So we compartmentalize things, based on role and responsibility. But then we also, like I said, um, uh, any one of our developers could be working from anywhere in the world, but there have to be on the right machine and at the right connection point and on the right VPN in order to access whatever project they're working on. So it's a many layered beast, and it becomes something that really takes on a life of its own. I could spend a lot of time talking about security, but I don't think that's the primary focus of our talk today. So
Yeah. So I see final last question from Zofia, and we have to finish. She asks, generative AI, yes or no? What's your take from engineering team perspective? All of the tools like Copilot and similars, you use them, tested them. Are you going to code faster? What do you think?
I'm gonna buck Sophia's question here and go with the answer in the middle, and say maybe. Um, we've done some testing. I see potential for it. Again, there's a lot of proprietary information that I wouldn't want someone else's AI model to have, maybe. And
Mhm.
maybe that's just a little oversensitive, but I think that there's a gap there that we haven't solved yet, with making sure that AI information is to your point earlier, is real or secure. So
Yeah. Open source models for the win. This is something we should all, as a society, I think, keeps fingers crossed and fight for, uh, also with regulators. And on this note, Todd, thank you very much for being with us here. Thank you for your insights. Those, for me, very interesting conversations. I've learned a lot about the education systems and edtech in the US. So again, thanks. And to all the viewers and listeners, if you are running an edtech startup, this might be a good idea to reach out to Todd to get a review or maybe tips how your infrastructure and product can be better. Thank
Thank you.
you. See you. Bye.
Bye.